All right, welcome to the REI Diamond Show. Today we have Michael Tran with us. Michael Tran is an associate vice president in the Colliers International Dallas Fort Worth real estate office, where he specializes in acquisitions and dispositions of industrial properties in the Dallas Fort Worth area and throughout Texas. He has a background driving more than $600 million in value through leasing and has closed more than 900 commercial real estate deals to date. Michael, welcome to the show.
Dan, thank you for having me. I'm honored.
Did we get the stats right there in the intro? Sometimes they're a little old when they're on LinkedIn.
Oh, yeah. We're probably a little bit over like 950 now. We had a little bit of slowdown last year or two, but we're a team of five guys who been in the industry for over like 50 years combined. So we've got some heavy deal volume. We try to do at least 50 to 100 transactions a year on the multi-tenant industrial side.
Nice. So I am going to start us in a little bit of a unique philosophical place, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is not going to be like a question. I have a little bit of verbiage here to package this. So we have on one side of the coin Sam Zell, and for anyone listening who does not know who Sam Zell is, Sam built a very large multifamily portfolio. I believe he sold that. He built one of the largest mobile home park portfolios in the country. I believe he may have sold that. He may still own it, or his company. And he was probably the uh, most known recently for timing the office market and exiting equity office properties, I believe it was, in 2017. And looking back, what we all know about office now, I mean, that was like impeccable timing. And unfortunately, Sam Zell passed. So that's Sam Zell. And Sam Zell's philosophy was there's way too much risk in developing real estate. There's way too many assets out here that can be bought, cheap compared to having to take on the risk of development. So he did not get into development. And I'm not sure, I'm sure, somebody in the comments knows he built something and got burned on it. I don't know all the details as to whether they did any development, but his main philosophy was like buy existing to mitigate the risk. And then on the other side of the coin, we have Trammell Crow. Trammell Crow, for those listening that may not know that name, Trammell Crow is probably one of the largest developers in the country right now. 50, $60 billion in maybe assets or transactions. Big number, regardless of the detail of how that number is constructed. Trammell Crow started developing. This was a guy, his name was Trammell Crow. He started, I believe he was from Texas, and he built his first warehouse deal in the 1940s, I think. And then he went on to build a ton of warehouse, owned trucking companies. The trucking company fed him with tenants so that he could build to suit and develop new warehouse deals for these tenants. So clearly, Michael, Trammell Crow made money on development, and the company must still make money on development. So we have Sam Zell by existing, and that's always been my thing. It's always existing houses. I've never brought a house vertical out of the ground. And then on the other side of the coin, we assume Trammell Crow is making a profit, or they wouldn't continue to keep putting these developments and bringing them vertical out of the ground. And in doing the research for the show, you had made comments about development and bringing multi-tenant flex space out of the ground. And so I'm curious, like, who does it work for profitably? Maybe there's a client avatar or just some thoughts and insights as to why you would direct one or multiple of your clients to develop anything when we have those two dichotomies.
Yeah, so I'll start off with where a lot of these properties are being built. So a lot of them are built kind of outer skirts of DFW, high growth areas. When you buy land outside the county, you can kind of build, without a lot of restrictions from the city. So we've seen a lot of guys who have gotten into this space on accident, and they've done super well. And they find out after we call them, hey, you can sell this for almost double or almost, $80 higher than what you built it for per square foot, right? And so these guys that have discovered that, they're like, maybe we should just start building this everywhere in the right areas. And not have to run into all the permitting. Some of these guys can turn a project around in 12 to 16 months. And what makes it easy for these guys is because if you follow the home growth correctly, the lease up is there and you can have it almost stabilized upon completion. Because as you put up the building, a tenant's going to see it, they're going to call you, you're the owner out there, you're getting it built, you're talking to them, you strike a deal that day. And so that's how a lot of our clients, in the last 5 to 8 years have exited, was just because a little bit of luck, found the right spot. They knew, parts of DFW were going to explode, and they kind of built up around these projects, and they're all doing very well stabilized. I would say, the vacancy on a lot of these in the right areas can be almost 0%. But if it's in the wrong areas, I've seen it kind of float around that 80 to 85% leased, just because the area's gotten overbuilt. And that's been another thing we've been tracking as well. But also, to buy existing on these, that was one of your questions, right? Should you buy one of these existing?
Yep.
Yeah. And there's some that, older product, 1980 stuff that we still sell out here for very high price per foot. That stuff almost becomes infill and you can't replace that. And so that also, if you can execute on a good business plan, you can probably, with what we're tracking, we're seeing institutions start to buy up this stuff finally. Whereas, 2 years ago, we'd call them and they would just hang up the phone. Like they had no interest in this stuff. Right. And, as of our last pull we did on REIT owned multi-tenant flex, it is now, I think we're at 24% institutionally owned, whereas a few years ago, we were only 18%. So it's going to trend to where we could see this in the next 8 years, probably getting up to 50%, even higher.
Wow. So let's pull apart the thread on maybe some of the numbers. So a client could sell this deal for $80 a foot more. What year, if we could take an example deal without sharing any confidential information on it, maybe, what year was it built? Do you know what the cost per foot was to build it? And maybe the weighted lease average per foot price in place on something like that. And then what would be the exit per foot?
Oh yeah, for sure. So I won't talk about anything, in the last 3 years. Inflation is just, driven construction costs up. But for what we're seeing right now, for a simple average build, all in cost, you're about $115 for a very basic build per square foot.
And that's now, or that's a few years ago?
That's now. A few years ago,
that
you
makes sense.
were in the 80s, maybe even lower. And those guys were selling at 130 to 140 a foot back then. Versus now, we're seeing, if you're building in the right areas, there's lots of good parts of DFW. There's lots of good parts of Texas. We've even seen guys in Oklahoma get some really good pricing as well. But back to your point, if we are looking at good parts of the Metroplex, or and we do these studies for a lot of our clients looking to buy this stuff or build, we'll run them a site analysis where you can actually project a rental rate. So a lot of these, to help get to that value I'm talking about at the end, you're looking at anywhere between $14 to $18 per square foot triple net. So backing that into a good area, building at 115, maybe you dress it up a little, you get it up to like 125 a square foot on the all-in build cost. You're looking at an exit. Right now, I just took out a deal in Bernie, which is priced at 200 a square foot right now, and they built it for around 120, 123, I think.
And they finished that in the last 12 months, the construction, or
yeah, brand new construction, 2023. Just finished the last building a few months ago, and now they're 95% leased in that time frame. And we have it on market now, fielding offers. Good deal. There's another one. I don't know if you're familiar with Buda, Texas, which is south of Austin. Just evaluated a deal out there. That one's at about 185 a square foot. They built that one for around 125 a square foot on that deal. So
And are
uh,
these institutional buyers that are paying? Are these REITs that are buying at that price point?
for these two, so one's going to be probably above 20 million. That one institution will probably look at. The Bernie one, we're probably going to do a high net worth fund out of California or high net worth private guy.
And how big were each of those ones? So 20 million is what, 100,000 square feet?
That one, I think we're sitting at about 120, yeah, 120,000 square feet on that one. Can't remember
Okay.
specifically, but then this Bernie one is actually 60,000 square feet. So it's a little bit easier to manage. Um, but it's just a smaller price point. So institutions not going to scoop that one up.
Got it. So a high net worth individual buys this 60,000 square foot flex space. In a few moments, we'll steer our conversation a little bit around why Texas and Fort Worth and Dallas and the Metroplex um, are such promising markets for this kind of product. It's a loaded question because I have a lot of opinions that I think I have on my own, and I like it for those reasons. But I'd be curious to hear what you'll have to say in a few moments. But this high net worth individual is buying 60,000 square feet. What are the size of the bays, and what is the level of his or her active management to own this thing for the next 3 to 7 years or however long they carry it?
Yeah, so for your bay depths, you never really want them to get too deep. I think the deepest I've ever seen is like 70 feet. But overall, if these guys are also looking to, I'm sorry, what was your second question to that?
Yeah, it was what is the size? So maybe like square foot of each suite, each
Oh, yeah, yeah,
space.
yeah. So yeah, each
And then the
space,
management, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So for the space size, the highest demand in Texas actually is 1,800 square feet. That is like your sweet spot. It's the fastest to lease. Um, you'll throw in like 2,500 square feet here and there, but also a lot of the guys here that are building in the county, they do not want to exceed each city's sprinkler requirement. So you'll see a lot of odd numbers that are like a building that's like 5,950 square feet because you got to stay under 6,000 square feet to avoid sprinklers. You'll see some other cities, theirs is a little bigger. So you can do like a 7,000 square foot building, not exceeding 8,000, stuff like that. As far as management, there's a lot of good local shops that do really well because they're pretty hands on. They're out there. These tenants, what's funny is you'll find a lot of them just driving to the property. So if you just place somebody there, you'll just have it leased up just because people are coming through on the drive by. And also, what we've also found that Facebook Marketplace is a super great place to even find tenants for this stuff. It's almost as if it's like the Craigslist back in the day.
How about
Um,
that?
yeah, yeah. And so we'll just see a lot of guys come off of those platforms. And then, of course, if you have a leasing agent on site, as long as they're picking up the phone, you should be able to get it leased up. But these are very high volume agents that need to be signing 2, 3 leases a week because these deals, most of these guys, they don't lease any longer than 2, 3 years max.
We're building something like 400,000 square feet of self storage in a partnership that I'm in the northeastern section of the United States. Very constrained market. That's why we opted to do that. Your
Yeah.
build costs are exactly what they were when we were mapping this thing out 3 years ago. When we were first looking at these deals, it was $80, $89. I think we're coming in at 110, and this is like self
Yeah.
storage. It's not flex. We are building some probably 30,000 square feet of flex on the front of one of our locations there in that one. And having the chance to look in the window of, and we probably have in the ones I'm an owner, we probably have another million plus square feet of existing. And it's like it's like running a store, Michael. You're like,
Oh
it's
yeah.
constant transactions, right, for self
Yeah.
storage.
Yeah.
And I don't own much, if any, other than what we're building of the Flex. And I have a lot of friends who do. And it sounds like it's not quite this crazy fast hamster wheel, but it is actually pretty high touch
Yeah.
compared to if we had 150,000 square foot single tenant Trammell Crow style warehouse
Yeah.
with one tenant, you're going to have nothing to do. The high net worth individual has nothing to do other than shoulder the risk of that tenant leaving, which is pretty freaking high. But if
Yep.
we're looking at the flex space, the roofer's going to move out, the painter guy's going to move out, and there's a waiting list probably of two other roofers and two other painters who like want that space immediately
Yeah.
when you're in this high demand market. So you have a better risk profile with more tenants, but that comes with more attentiveness that's going to be involved from the owner and the manager. And one of the challenges we have, and I'm curious your insight on this, is the operators I know personally who are succeeding in this space are taking the phone calls themselves, or they have this leasing broker on their team, because leasing commissions on a 1,600 square foot, 1,800 square foot space, they aren't as juicy as a single tenant 150,000 square foot Morgan Lee warehouse with a multinational tenant that
Yeah.
takes that's a big commission. We're talking
Yeah.
six-figure commission when Morgan Lee
Hmm.
signs on the single tenant thing. So I've noticed in my limited experience as a commercial real estate investor, I've noticed that the highest caliber talent is going to go after the highest net volume of deal. And so that leaves this window in the 2,000 square foot space where maybe it's the new brokers coming in,
Yeah.
maybe it's the owner. The owner and the owner's team have been the highest performing people I've seen running that lease up and that
Yeah.
constant continuous leasing. But what other like insights or maybe tips do you have? What are you telling your high net worth client who's going to buy the 60,000 square foot space? Like what is their best course of action to maintain the leasing velocity that developer probably was incentivized to have high leasing velocity because they're looking to payday, but
Hmm.
how does the new owner, the high net worth individual and person in their management company, like how do they continue to keep that going?
Yeah. So most recently, the I have two deals I'm about to take to market actually, and both owners have offered to stay on the management and make sure they keep that face, that rapport they've built up over the years. A lot of the buyers that are buying this stuff from out of state, they're like, I don't know this market. I've never heard of Tyler, Texas, and what am I going to do here? And there's a lot of good local guys that will always do a really good job for you. But if you can keep that owner to manage it for the next 2 years and help you execute on that plan, um, I've seen that. And then also, one of the groups we're working with right now, they're also a real estate company as well. But we've teamed up to sell the deal with them. And they said, hey, I'll just have my residential company manage this for me. I'll throw it in for free. So these guys, they can reduce that on their operating expense for 2 years, and then we can help them execute on a plan because they're motivated to go buy another deal. That's just one of them, but that's one of the ways we've been seeing success, as well as you're right. Your owner is going to be the best leasing guy because you're going to be the first one there to meet the tenant who's driving on site, like I told you earlier. Or you do have to get a young, hungry agent, new in the industry, who is nearby and can be there within 5 minutes. Because most of the time, when that tenant is calling off your sign, they're probably already there. And you can probably actually, there's a leasing guy on our team here who has executed probably 4 leases in the last week just because he brings a lease with him for them to review after he shows them the space. So just getting an agent that's well prepared. But I think at the end of the day, yes, being the owner, leasing it yourself, having a simple, 2, 3 page lease is the best way to go with these things.
Yeah, 100%. So in your career, you started off in leasing. I'm curious,
Yeah.
um, did it kind of take that trajectory? Did you start off on some smaller stuff, or did you just happen to jump into like larger scale leasing early on?
Yeah, so for me, I started at a boutique firm. And so, they had a need. They're like, hey, we've got some listings you can work on. You can build it up if you want. So I worked a lot of the mid cities here in DFW. And so I just got kind of thrown into the pool and they're trying to see if I could sink or swim. And what's funny is they're like, we don't know if this guy will make it. He's kind of monotone, but they didn't know that I did care. Just, this voice is like hard to like show any expression, right? So um, turns out I start cranking out like 80 leases a year. And
Nice.
I was like I was spinning left and right. And, one of the things was I had two product types I was covering, which was retail and office. And then I started seeing these like flex deals and I'd call them and most owners would never give me the listing on them, even though I was like, hey, that's like a good asset to like work on, it's like seems easy. And most of the time I'd call those owners and they're like, hey, we're fully leased, like we don't need any help, we just renew. So that's how I got started, was just being a young hungry agent, fresh out of college, and I just started running with it. And I did about 50 to 80 leases a year, and I had a very high stress volume at home, but I loved it all and I learned a lot, and I wouldn't give it up for anything.
What was the average square foot size of each of those leases?
I would say my average was 3,000 square feet early on. And then it doubled after my second year. And then after that, I hovered around like the 8,000 square foot range because, since I was boutique, I didn't want to go chase anything higher than 15 to 20,000 square feet because, all the bigger shops are already going after those. And then you just had like mid-level firms also trying to get in with those guys. So I just stayed in my arena and it just kind of worked for me. And I had probably over like 60, 70 listings at one point in time. And so I just kept working, moved tenants here, moved tenants there, tenants that knew me, they'd call me because I just had such a high concentration of buildings in one area. So they just knew like to reach out and, we could just try to match them with another listing or so.
So I'm assuming most of the leases you're working on, you're dealing with like mom and pop owners, meaning there's some person here that make that makes the decisions on the lease and probably operates a lot quicker. I mentioned Morgan Lee in my 150,000 square foot example. That's an international tenant. I don't know. There's probably a board. There's a legal team. It's not like one person's making a decision in a 2-page lease, probably 100-page lease, and they probably move very slow compared to what you've had experienced in your career, Michael. And I think that's exactly why the flex space maybe has this higher leasing velocity, because you're not waiting for, I mean, you certainly don't want to like send them the lease and have their attorney look over it. They'll be glad to do that if that's what your instruction is. But there's this benefit to dealing with people who can make decisions quickly, and now you can fill your space quickly. If they do move, you can fill your space again quickly, so it lowers your risk profile even a little bit
Mm-hmm.
further, I think, than much larger asset class.
Oh yeah, yeah, and I kind of just got. It's funny how I got into real estate. It was a friend that said, "Hey, I think you'd be good at this." Is all he said, and I said, "What is this commercial real estate? What is this like commission only thing? My parents will probably kill me, but you know what? It sounds interesting." And he's like, "Uncapped income," and I was like,
Yeah, it
"Okay, let
is.
me look." I was like, "Okay." So I started looking into it more, and I wasn't ever, really from like an area where I was like silver spoon kind of guy or country club guy, and so next thing you know, I'm like in this industry. I was like, oh, I'm working with these mom and pops easily. I can relate to them, and it just kind of worked better for my personality, and it still has to this day. Even working with these like institutions, we're starting to talk to more now, which I'm getting used to. But before, it was just a lot of people that kind of just like you and me.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Uh,
So on a cap rate, is there any example? It's funny, like you mentioned these names, I forgot to write them down. And you're like, you probably never heard of Butte, Texas, or whatever it was. And I was like, yeah, I didn't hear about the other one either. I don't know any of these city names.
Uh,
But is there any framework maybe for cap rates? Just $200 square foot deal is like brand new construction. Maybe it's
mhm.
going to the institution at 20 million. What type of cap rate is the exit that you think would occur there?
For flex, it's such an interesting asset class where we speak to so many owners, and I don't know who they talk to like get their cap rate or where they pull their cap rate from, but it's an educating process because on the cap rates, it's not as easy as like, hey, this Starbucks is the same Starbucks that's going to be here for 15 years, or this McDonald's that's going to be a 4 cap here, and that Starbucks is a 6.5 there. Each market's leasing velocity is different. Each market has, different average occupancy, rental rate growth, population growth as well. A lot of them have different, spending per capita. And so when you have to like take in each market's little niche specific things and what's good about it, they kind of get maxed out on their value that you can bring to each one. So I say that because we've sold stuff at a 4 cap in a really great area of DFW, like North Fort Worth, which is like one of the highest growth areas, right? And
And let's like stay on that for a moment. So a 4 cap in North Fort Worth, it's a high growth area, but what else about the deal made that buyer say, "Hey, this thing worked"? And when was this? Was this in the 2 or 3% interest time, or is this like in the last
this
18 months?
this was last year, yeah.
Yeah. So
And
for like an example for listeners who may not really grasp the whole cap rate conversation, would I be close if I'm estimating the interest rate you're paying on a loan is probably 6% for a well qualified borrower?
oh yeah, yeah.
And they're buying it at a 4% return, so they have negative leverage. So like how did they make sense of that deal? Maybe a little bit of the business plan would help kind of put
Oh
some
yeah,
light on
yeah,
that.
for sure. So it was a 4 cap because there was a lot of value add. The owner that owned it never fixed anything. It was just a very junky park that was built in 2010 and never cleaned it. His expense ratio, I mean, he was paying like $1 a foot in expenses, and that's just not market average. So we applied all of the market average stuff, expense wise, and then he put down 50% on that deal. And he's executing a plan to bring up the rates because his rates were half of what market rates are. And so he's doing that all right now, cleaning up the park, getting rid of all the handshake deals that previous owner had done. And now he's putting in real leases, $12 triple net, and he's going to probably look to sell that in a year or two.
What percentage of an increase do you think his business plan adds in value, assuming the market doesn't do anything crazy?
I think he's going to probably be able to sell it for, I'm going to say 160 a square foot.
And his all in will be,
His all in will be probably 110.
so he's talking about like, I don't know what it is, 50%, 40% gross profit margin somewhere in there in
Yeah,
a 3 or 4 year period. And a state that property stabilized, North Fort Worth, phenomenal
yeah.
area. What would you guess would be like the cap rate someone's going to pencil out? I mean, is that going to be a negative leverage too because they're looking at like future growth in the rent, or is that going to be more in that like 6% give or take range because that's where interest rates are?
No, yeah. So that's a perfect segue to his exit plan. Since he's probably going to max out a lot of the value, it's going to be closer to 7.5, 7.75 on the sales price.
Okay, so cap rate, right?
Yeah, cap rate.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
after he's executed his plan, there's really no more value there. For the next buyer, it's just going to have to be, another common buyer we've seen that has come into this space is multifamily guys who are, and for the last 10 years, multifamily guys have had it great, but now it's finally our turn. And now they're realizing, hey, we can go buy this flex stuff. The tenant doesn't live there. We don't have to change sinks, countertops, carpet, paint anymore. We just sweep a warehouse, do a 1 or 2 year lease with these guys. They love it. We've had so many multifamily people come into the space. So that's been a really big thing where, we're getting a lot of multifamily guys who are like, yeah, I like this 7.5, 7.75, cap rate. This isn't bad.
I'm going to run through that example a little further here in a minute.
Yeah, sure.
So here's what I'm doing the math if anyone's watching the video. So it's like, why do I want to buy the 7.5% cap rate? And if I'm like a hands-off kind of person, I don't want to do the paint job. I don't want to renegotiate the expenses. I don't want to put blacktop down. I don't want to paint the parking lot. I don't want to paint the garage doors and change a few of them out. The 7.5 makes sense because I put 30% down, give or take, and I'm borrowing money, hopefully at 5.5 or 6% interest. Now I've set myself up for a big win if the macro market moves at some point in the future and the interest rates come down and suddenly I could get, call it 4.5%. I think it would take something pretty catastrophic for us to see the kind of interest rates we just got done witnessing through COVID. I don't think we'll see that again for at least 10 or 15 or 20 years till the new kids who aren't even in college yet start to come into leadership roles.
Yeah.
And they forget about what we're going through right now. So 7.5% to 6.5 is a 1.5% return on the full value of the money. And when you add the down payment in, obviously you're making 7%, 7.5% on that down payment money as well. And you shouldn't have too much in the way of CapEx. The roof should be good and the parking lot and all those items. So, I mean, I just did a $300,000 NOI. That may or may not be close to the deal, but it's not relevant to accurately talk about that deal. But for the example, if the building is generating $300,000 a year net after all the expenses, at a 7.5 cap, we have a $4 million valuation. So let's say I buy it at 7.5, it's 4 million. The interest rates stay the same, but we have something that's known as cap rate compression come through. And cap rate compression is what happened in self-storage, where in 2017, I don't know, it was probably trading at 9, 10% cap rate. No one wanted it. And then it got to be a hot product, and all of a sudden the cap rate compressed. It went down and it's trading at 6.5, 7%, 5.5%. The numbers got crazy. So if we saw, what did I do? I think I did a 6.5 at a 6.5% cap rate. So if this product continues to heat up like you're saying that it will, Michael, me as a buyer on this deal making 300 grand a year, if the market prices kind of go from 7.5% cap rate to 6.5% cap rate, the value would be 4.61 million. So it'd be 600,000 for not doing a whole hell of a lot. And we've seen that kind of cap rate movement occur as economics are good and growth continues and all the things. That doesn't even count for any rental rate inflation and increases that we might see. What are some things about the North Fort Worth, maybe even the entire Fort Worth, Dallas, Texas market that might kind of be the catalyst for some of that cap rate compression, Michael?
I think more so it's going to be a statewide deal. We saw this when PS Business Parks got bought out by Blackstone, and that's kind of a segue into another topic. But to give you some perspective on that, PS Business Park had a great brand, and they just wanted to buy basically a business and a brand that was very familiar across several assets. No, not several, sorry, the whole state. And so that's what a lot of these guys who are buying this, they just want to buy the same product that's replicated over and over and over. That's a brand, and they just want to gain market share. So that's where the cap rate compression will come from, is from buying a whole package of buildings, which is what a lot of these high level real estate funds are doing right now. Buying a lot of these off of us, they're going to brand them, they're going to package them up here into 5 to 8 years, and they're going to sell it off to an institution And that's where your cap rate compression will come from, is selling a brand and a similar product that they can just, take day one and start operating immediately, almost like a business.
And that's like the institutional buyer is
Yeah.
paying the more rich price of the lower cap rate because they're buying the brand. And in your opinion, what does the trend line look like on the institutional appetite for this kind of product? You just mentioned the Blackstone deal at PS Business Park, but are you seeing any other interests from other institutional level buyers?
Yeah, I mean, they're walking through our offices every day. And so, when they come by, they're like, hey, we want to look to get into this flex stuff, Um, we have a lot of office that we're going to unload. And we've been hearing you guys do a lot of this flex stuff. And this is a pretty big group. But they're like, hey, can you start sending us the stuff? Even metal is okay. We have groups that are, usually more core asset buyers. They're like, hey, we're hearing about this flex stuff. We've talked to our board already. A lot of them are very comfortable with the asset. They're familiar with it. Start sending us the stuff. So yeah, it's going to grow here very soon. And it's being talked about on all different levels of institutions, from low to high ones. And we're starting to see them come through more and more with questions on this and how to operate it. Is what we've been seeing for the last 3 years.
So before 3 years, they weren't asking about this conversation. This trend really
No,
wasn't there.
no.
If you had to guess, what do you think that cap rate on our example that we said 7.5 when it's stable? What do you think that was 4 or 5 years ago, right before COVID?
Before COVID, like if we were selling that deal in like what year specifically? Or
2019. Yeah.
oh, 2019. Okay, yeah, yeah. So back in 2019, this deal was probably at like an 8. Yeah, I sold several flex parks around an 8.5 cap.
And that was in an environment where the interest rates were probably 4.5 or 5% in
Yeah,
2019.
yeah,
Yeah. So you're talking about, the spread from the interest of 5%, and they're selling it at 8%. You got a 3% spread on the investment. And now we're at like 6% interest and a 7.5 cap. So we're talking about a 1.5 spread. So in a sense, we have like even more compression that already took place in the market right now as we speak. And this is the same trend. I'm spending a lot of time on this, but this is the same trend that multifamily experienced from about like 2011 through probably, I mean, it probably was right up until the middle of 2022 when the last of the low interest rate loans went to settlement. And then
yeah,
the cap rate was done compressing at that point, and we're all aware
yeah.
of what's been taking place in multifamily. There's headwinds for multifamily. I think it's still a great asset class and there's still returns to be had there. But the cap rate compression cycle certainly made a lot of groups and investors look a lot smarter and generate a percentage more profits than they would have otherwise if it wasn't for the compression. But part of the investment cycle is trying to be on the right side of the cap rate compression. And we saw that same thing unfold in self-storage, like I had just mentioned, from 2016, 2017 through COVID. It's kind of softened a little bit. But one of the examples people probably would relate to easily, who aren't in the industrial space, is like you've seen Extra Space, you've seen Public Storage. These are big
Mhm.
institutional buyers, and we're doing the same thing. That's why we're building 400,000 square feet of self-storage. Like we originally did that so that we may potentially be able to package the brand and sell it to the institutional buyer. The appetite's a little cooler now that the cycle has changed, but hey, we're fine. We'll wait 8, 10, 12, 15, 20 years. We'll be the institutional buyer and just sit on it forever if we have to. We like our assets and we feel like we've chosen solid locations. So it's interesting being on the right side of when the assets, like trend following, right? In the market, sometimes the value goes up and a person says, oh, I don't want to buy. Look how cheap it was 6 months ago. There's no way the price is going to come down. But many investors see the trend and starts to go up and say, oh, it has a lot further to go up. And so they justify paying that higher price. You have to be careful. It's a dangerous situation because you don't want to be
Mm.
paying the high price in 2022 for multifamily right before the trend goes in the opposite direction. But if you're buying anywhere in that 10-year period prior in multifamily, you could have made some mistakes and the trend sort of helped you correct them. So I think we're in the trend now with this multi-tenant flex. How far would you
Yeah.
see the trend going?
I think we've got another good 8 years on this product. It's got a lot of runway. There's not enough of it. Um, you know, I will say we have seen people lose on these. No investment is ever guaranteed, but as long as you're building in the right areas, and we're just so keen on that, just because you know when markets get flooded and certain people build in certain markets where they've been doing this for a long time, they don't need that return. They're just happy to get their 5% return. I've talked to a guy in the South, like Dallas area, who keeps building more and more, and I'm like, dude, I can sell you one with a better return than you building this at what you're leasing it at. And he's like, yeah, I know, but I'm just older, and like this gives me something to do. And I was like, I mean, I get it, but also like you're hurting the market down here by keeping these rates so low, because you can beat anybody out on price just because he's already done so much of this stuff. And so you just want to avoid areas like that when you're trying to build this kind of product.
Yeah, that guy sounds like he's dangerous to everybody else around him. He's probably sitting at home, relishing the competition and loving the idea of undercutting everyone else in the market and getting a kick out of that. Yeah,
Oh
he's
yeah,
winning, but at what cost?
yeah.
It's interesting. So he's not necessarily maybe motivated by the money. Maybe he's motivated by sheer competition.
Yeah, and it's not just him. There's like other guys in South Fort Worth who are doing this stuff too, and same deal. He's a $10 gross across the board, and he does not implement triple nets, and he has ravaged this market, and he has so much more room to build, and it's hurting everybody. I'll give you a deal story on this one. We sold a park down there, also 60,000 feet. And also, that's actually the perfect like sale size for one of these parks, by the way. So anything between 40 to 70,000 feet is probably the best like largest buyer pool for this stuff. But anyways, back to my point on this deal. Um, this guy, we sold this park for him. He's getting $12 triple net across the board. This guy that I just told you about entered the market, has built probably 80,000 feet already, and he has room for another 60, 70,000 feet. He has come in, he has implemented his business plan to do $10 gross across the board,
Wow.
and it has driven this $12 triple net park backwards into a $9 triple net park. And so, um, we've advised that this owner should release everything as much as they can, get it, fully occupied, and probably sell this park and move their funds to a different one, just because of, the way that market is trending.
What kind of money does it take for someone to get involved? We had someone listening right now, and we talked a lot of numbers, a couple square foot prices and cap rates, but maybe if we were to buy a 60,000 square foot deal, 40 to 70K square feet, what do you think the purchase price might be on something that's available now? What kind of down payment does somebody need? And do they need to have like portfolio um, experience in order to get the loan? Or do you happen to have lenders where if someone has the down payment and the deal and the management set up, we'd be able to get them done?
Oh yeah, I mean, we have the Colliers mortgage team here. We can get you guys in touch with them, but we also know a ton of lenders who are happy to lend on this product versus like office or something like that. But typically right now we're seeing at minimum 40% down on any flex deal.
Do you feel like that's high or low?
I think that's been the going forward average for the last few years. Before it was around 30% down.
And what's the purchase price of something like that? Is this a $5, a $10 million asset?
So for any park, let's just do this one. I just gave you an example of that one's probably a $115 square foot deal. But we've seen these go up to 8 million or so sometimes.
Okay. So
In
so
good
at
areas.
115, 60,000 square feet is a $6.9 million deal.
Yeah.
So you would need somewhere around 3 million by the time you pay the closing cost to get the settlement on that.
Yeah.
Do you know what the cash on cash for someone like that is if you put that together?
Each deal is different. We've seen, I think, 7 to 8%. I think. Don't quote me on that.
Okay. All right. And again, we're talking stable asset with without the value add. Do you have a decent percentage? Like most of my listeners are buy a deal, put money into the deal, push the value, kind of like the value add one that we discussed a little while ago. Do you have deals of that nature that come across your desk?
Like super good value add deals.
I mean, it might not be the home run we talked about where he's getting a 50% push in value, but yeah, value
Yeah.
add deals where you can, boost the value and then maybe refinance a percentage of your down payment back out if you're going to hold it long term.
There's a lot of those in DFW have been scooped up. I will tell you that. But there's you'll find maybe a needle in a haystack here or there, but there's not a lot left. But there's still good deals out here. I see, if you're building in the right markets, like I keep harping on, you can differentiate yourself from competition. Um, like an amenity we've seen people add is like side yards to their space. I think you had that long yards episode
Oh
on
yeah,
here.
yeah.
Yeah, basically that, but next to your warehouse space. We'll see guys pay a lot of money just to have that side yard with their business. And you can really steal tenants from other parks into yours, and you can actually get a premium on by adding those into your park if you have the room.
And
And
what
it's
what
just
are they putting in there? I mean, are they parking trucks out there? What's the main use of the yard?
Yeah. So we've actually seen a lot of guys. They'll put transportation companies. We'll see plumbing guys. They'll just put some product out there. We've seen, and we don't like leasing to auto users, but sometimes we'll have them in there. We've got landscaping guys who can keep stuff outside. Same for concrete. And so it's been a very good amenity to have. And I'll give you another deal story real quick on this one. So same street, same deal, one park, gravel driveways, but every single building had a side yard, getting $14 triple net, 4 buildings on a corner. That same street, every other metal business park, I sold the 8 buildings on that one. They were $9 to $10 gross. Couldn't even get triple net. They had much harder time leasing, and they also, as of today, I think they're about 50% leased versus the other guy who's been only doing 1-year leases and renewing and increasing rates every year and has never had a tenant leave. So you need to find kind of stuff like that in markets that don't have it yet. I will say side yards haven't been implemented as much as they've been needed or the demand for. And so that's where you can really make some money on those deals.
I mean,
Where you
the only question is you say it hasn't been implemented. Is that because of the restriction and constrained nature of the lot is too tight where the building is and there's nowhere, like, what are you going to do? You're going to tear down a CVS next door to put side lots? That's never going to make any sense, right? So
right.
why hasn't it been implemented? Is the land simply not there, or have owners not had the thought to put the fencing up and kind of chop that
Yeah,
area up,
yeah.
what would be the predominant reason?
It's been because a lot of owners have been trying to get the lot coverage. And so, typically it's about 30% lot coverage, but a lot of them just try to get more square footage on. And what they don't realize is having that amenity, or even like if you have some frontage, we've, seen guys put showroom glass, dress it up a little bit, and that'll really get them their rental rates they're looking for. If they've got a little bit of retail frontage, they can charge a little bit more for that. We've seen, higher clear heights as well become a big amenity recently. And so building a little
In
bit,
the smaller spaces, what clear heights do you mean? Like what is 12 the average, but what is the high one you're seeing?
14 to 16 is the average. And
Okay.
then for the high, we're starting to see 22 to, 28 feet. And
And that's more to
that,
build.
yeah, more to build, but also your tenant pool increases actually when you build higher on your clear height. We've actually, um, a developer I'm working with down in Houston, um, just called him one day. I was catching up with him after a conference, and I said, "Hey, you're like the only guy out here building with higher ceiling heights, other than one other group in North Houston." And I said, "Have you ever gotten a call from a pickleball facility?" And he's like, "I have gotten like 4 or 5 calls this last week alone for pickleball." And I was like, "Yeah, because it's happening up here in DFW, but nobody in DFW is doing high enough clear heights. There's only one group that is. And, it's been a very high demand tenant that's been coming in looking for, almost like a build to suit pickleball facility."
Yeah, it's a trend I'm hearing a lot about. So you're a competitive tennis player, if I remember correctly, right? You like
Yeah,
tennis?
I am very big on the tennis. Yeah.
Right. So, what is your opinion on this whole pickleball thing? Is this like a progression as you get older from tennis? You do that, or is this a fad? Is there some large private equity firm backing some franchises, and this thing's going to like fizzle out later? Like, what's the story with pickleball, Michael?
Uh, you know, 4 or 5 years ago, I would have laughed at you if you said pickleball is here to stay. It's definitely here to stay. I think tennis players need to be more open to it and learn how to coexist with pickleball. Um, there's actually another very popular one in like South America and Europe called paddle tennis, which is played in like a fish box, and you can play off the wall, almost like squash.
Hmm.
And that one is also going to be added on to the competition as well, because it's slower than tennis but faster than pickleball. So I could see all three being required at every club moving forward. Um, but back to your question about pickleball, yes, as I just turned 33. Body is starting to break down. I'll play a little bit of pickleball here and there. And when I say a little bit, I am probably playing once or twice a month, and only
Okay.
when asked at like networking events to play. So and I do like it. I think it's fun. I think it's a fun game. It's not my preferred workout. I think, tennis is a little bit more physically demanding, which is what I need for now. But I think eventually I will, transition into pickleball, maybe like 2 days a week, and then tennis like the other 3 or 4, or, it just really depends. But I do like the sport. I think it's a different pace, a different level, it's a different game altogether. But I do like it, and I think it's you need to just learn to coexist with the pickleball people, and it is a loud noise, but overall, it's here forever and it's here to stay.
Yeah, it's interesting. I haven't had a chance to hear anybody who's avid tennis player describe it to me yet. I've only heard the landlords who are getting the calls. Like, yeah, they're paying $8 a foot or whatever it was.
Uh,
You hear I've heard the economics, but not the tennis players take. So I appreciate you sharing.
oh Yeah, no, they'll pay higher than $8 a foot. I think the one up here is paying like 15 triple net.
Wow.
Yeah, they've got a subscription model. You pay annually for your membership, and you get access to like four or five courts covered indoors all year, and um, they've got it kind of set up almost like. Have you heard of Chicken and Pickle? Do you have one up there yet?
I do not. No, we have not. I don't know about it if it's here.
Okay, it is very popular. I think they started in Kansas, and they are growing like rapid fire, and they are building everywhere, as far as I heard. And I wouldn't be surprised if you got one up there very soon.
All right, I'll have to keep my eye out. I've had knee issues for the past couple years, and I'm like 95% healed. So I'm looking forward to maybe trying out pickleball, getting back out on the skis, maybe taking some runs here or there. I'm kind of waiting and nervous
Oh
with the
yeah.
knee until it's like 105% before I like put it through those kind of paces again. But
Oh yeah, yeah. Never rush an injury. I have a tear in my ankle right now, and I'm just doing a ton of PT till I get back and can play full on. So yeah, I'm right there with you.
nice, nice.
Uh,
Cool. Michael, last couple questions here as we wrap up. Any book recommendations you might make that happen to do with our topics that we talked about today, or maybe just impactful in your life overall?
yeah, so I've got three here actually that I'm currently reading. So one, I actually wrote it with my team. So Flex Space Domination. We
This
wrote this.
one?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so Cody, Austin, and I, we have spoke to so many developers in the last 2 years. Last year we were like, man, we need to buckle down and just write this thing because we're answering so many questions. And
Nice.
so we wrote this for the new developer or anybody looking to get into it, or even if you're already in Flex, we like getting feedback on this book. And so, you know, I wrote the leasing section because I was big on that, and also a little bit on the branding side. But yeah, make sure you check this book out because we tried to make it very easy to read, very relatable, and also just something to get everybody started in this space just because we need more of the stuff to sell. um, and then moving on to the
The
second.
irony, if I could interrupt, is I didn't buy that because you were coming on the show, and I didn't put it on my desk because we were talking about this today. I somehow found that book on my own and then ordered it, and it's like on my desk as one of the next ones in line. So that was not staged
Oh,
for that to be on the desk.
oh man, Dan, thank you. We'll send you $20 back after the show, man.
That's cool. That's
you
cool.
could have just asked. We'll ship one to you too. And then another book I'm reading just because my fiance is pregnant, and so
Congratulations.
man, it's been very hard decoding her. So right now I'm reading Emotional Intelligence 2.0. It's just me trying to be a better partner, trying to understand her a little bit better. It's just been good to kind of, I think it helps in business too, when you're sitting there and you're trying to read everybody in the room. And, now that I kind of mentioned, we're working with more institutions, a lot of them are very straight faced, and
Mm,
you never know like how you're doing in the meeting until you read something like this where you're like, oh, okay, like they're just more listening, or they're at this stage where they're like trying to figure out, okay, are you the best team to go with versus like another team, or what about you guys makes you different, who's more creative. And that's what we try to really show when we're definitely pitching on a deal. And then also right now I'm also reading Dude, You're Gonna Be a Dad. um, I, my family, they're like, hey, you're like 10 years late to having a kid. We've been very worried about you. And they're like, we thought you were never gonna really settle down and find somebody that you really liked. And so this book has really helped me also understand what, my fiance is going through, how she's feeling each day. I'm really big on understanding people and getting to know people on a better level. And so this really helps when I, you know, I just see what she's going through, right? And but I don't know internally what she's thinking. Um, I don't know how she's feeling each day for sure. It's just more of like, hey, I'm throwing up. She's been throwing up every day ever since,
Mm.
and it's just been day by day for her. And I'm just trying to understand what's going on in her body to try to make sure I'm providing whatever I can, the best of my knowledge for her. And so this book has been saving me a little bit because she's like, oh, you're reading this book for me. It also gets me some brownie points out there too. So definitely recommend this book because if you're stressed at home, you don't want to bring that to the office with you. And you always want to keep that stuff separate, but it's good to have just because I really like that. It's helped me just always be positive at home for her, and then also at work. I never have to really worry about what's going to go on at home, and it's just helped me a lot on the business side too.
Do you know whether you're having a boy or a girl yet?
So 2 weeks ago, we found out we're having a boy.
All right. All right.
Yeah, yeah. So
Very
it
cool.
yeah, everybody's excited. All my friends thought I was having a girl. We had like a guest board, and turns out, lucky me, I'm having a boy.
Nice. Yeah, you'd be lucky either way, but
Yeah,
that's
I just
cool.
want a healthy kid, like
That's
10
right.
fingers, 10 toes. I'm happy.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah,
Good. Your life is going to change. It's going to be fun, very
yeah,
rewarding, new sense of purpose. Yeah, very excited for you on that path.
yeah. Thank you, Dan.
Michael, the crown jewel of wisdom, if you could go back and share with yourself day one in the real estate industry, the crown jewel of wisdom, what would that be?
So if I knew what I knew now, I would tell young me to definitely specialize in an asset and a product. Um, Dallas is a very competitive market, and I love this market. It's really shown me. You have to really keep your head down. You have to put in the hours. Um, and I didn't specialize getting into this industry. I was generalist, and a lot of people didn't take me seriously when I got in the business because I was doing everything. And even my competitors that were specializing um, are also former collegiate athletes. And
Mm.
so, a lot of former athletes are in this industry, and we all like to compete. And, imagine having a D1 athlete specialize in one asset, and then you have a teammate of his who knows that I'm spread thin working on two assets and then looking to get into a third because I was told, hey, maybe you should work on all three to hedge your risk when the market goes down. But when you're playing defense against two D1 level guys on all your listings, it is not a fun life. And once I just switched to the industrial side, it's been so much less stressful. I have less gray hair. Life's really good. I can just track one thing throughout Texas and not stress. And I can pick up a lot more that way just by being so specialized. My conversations are the same. It's just a way better way to live life in this industry when you can just focus on one asset and one goal and just selling and bringing more buyers into the space.
Nice. Before I ask my final question, Michael, is there any contact information you'd like to share?
Yeah, so I'm sure it'll be shared on the show notes, but you can reach me anywhere. LinkedIn, cell phone is 817-501-0024. Our team is also big on Twitter, or I mean X, and also on Instagram as well. So my Instagram is Michael Tran CRE, and my LinkedIn is Michael Tran DFW. So feel free to reach out anytime with any questions. Happy to help out any way I can.
And my final question is, what is the kindest thing anyone has ever done for you?
The kindest thing anybody's ever done for me. Actually, my first mentor in this industry um, brought me in, even though, I wasn't your typical commercial real estate guy. He even hired me when I was as monotone and as boring as I was in the interview. I showed no, character or anything like that. And, as he got to know me over the years, he actually said, hey, you should be more yourself because you're actually kind of funny. And I think a lot of your clients will see that in you, but also see that you're also a very good advisor and that you're going to be looking out for their best interest. And he really taught me, hey, like, work more within yourself and within like what you trust and who you are as a person. Um, and when I started doing that and being more myself, because I always thought like you had to have an image in this industry. But once he told me like, hey, you should just be yourself, um, my business like tripled
How
because of
about
that.
that?
That one thing he told me to focus on. It was crazy to me. I never thought it'd happen.
And you were just looking at all those institutional guys with the straight face and the monotone voice, copying them, huh?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And now they're like, dude, we remember you because you are different and you got your whole team is different. Like, they may call me the diversity hire on the team, but also it's just it's been good because we all work off each other. We all, get along and we all hang out after work and our team has a really good bond over here. So it's been very good for all three of us uh at this firm together.
Very cool. Michael, I have like 3 pages of notes here. I'm even more excited now to read Flex Space Domination that I got a
Hey,
chance to like hire the contributor to the book. That's very cool.
yeah.
So I appreciate your time and thank you for coming on the show.
Hey, Dan, anytime. Let's talk soon.